Hello, Jason. Of course, there's no language adequate for me to express my sympathies and condolences, and I thought I ought to explain why I've been producing videos and keeping track of Ariel's condition. I'm not a stalker. I am a person who mothers a dead child. This is very different than being the mother of a dead child, which I was for a while after it happened. I carried her as a burden. I carried her as a symbol of my failure, even to be able to biologically reproduce. I can't speak for all parents. I can speak from my experience, and that is that no matter how irrational it is, there is a primitive part of the brain, I think, that held me responsible for my child's welfare. And when she died, that part of me blamed me for hurting the child and attacked me for hurting the child. It's something primal. It's something reptilian brain. I don't know how to describe it. It wanted me dead, and I became suicidal, really suicidal. This went on for too long. I had to go through my situation alone. The father abandoned me. The people in the church I attended didn't know what to do, didn't really offer any comfort, not even a casserole. So I had to do it all myself, and mine was a surgical procedure. My child was removed from my body. They told me she was a pathology specimen, so I had images of her burning in a furnace, that her only experiences of life outside my body had been agony. I tortured myself really well over this. I was just a surgical procedure. She wasn't really a child. I won't discuss the politics of that or the ethics of that, but she was a wanted child, and her name was Viridiana. So my body was cut. The father of the child had abandoned me, and I had to go through it alone, and one does not go through this gracefully. There is nothing noble about death, and you know that. The reason I didn't complete the suicide was it suddenly occurred to me what I was doing. And that is, I was leaving. The only memorial to my daughter would have been Rogie killed herself because her baby died. My daughter's life needed to signify more than that to me. So, you said your heart is broken and that it will never be the same. I can tell you from my experience that it won't ever be the same. And as hideous and gruesome as it is maybe to say this, but you're a resourceful and intelligent person, Jason. Your heart will be bigger, and it will be stronger. At a hell of a cost. You will be more empathetic and compassionate toward others. In my case, it shifted my priorities completely. I no longer focused on the symptoms of things like environmentalism and fundamentalism and racism, and it got real simple. For me, my philosophy shifted to If it's not healthy for children, it's not healthy. And that's been my work ever since. All of it, environmentalism, racism, fundamentalism, all of it. If it's not healthy for children, it's not healthy. I already see that your daughter has created a legacy on YouTube. I can't pronounce the user's name, and I'm just newly subscribed to him, but he put out a little video about Ariel's death, in which I think it might have struck him for the first time that while trolling theists and calling them names might be a lot of fun, I think it suddenly dawned on him why people might seek comfort and answers in ways that aren't realistic. I think it's a sobering moment for some of us to realize that we're dealing with people, and people have very primal needs. And in my work, I try to provide alternatives to a superstition and easy wrong answers, rather than tell people how superior and enlightened I am compared to them. So I would look at your daughter and I would think Viridiana would be about that size. She'd be interested in other things, of course, because she's 17, but I projected a lot of the images I don't have of my daughter onto Ariel. All the potential, all the planning, all the hoping. When I knew I was pregnant, I didn't want to have my daughter carry on in my footsteps and do what I did, and all I wanted was to be able to provide some sort of safety and some sort of security in which a human being could develop and flourish and find her own place in the world. Oh, I imagine great things for Viridiana. And I've met young women since who are doing those great things. And part of mothering a dead child is encouraging those things. Not telling them which way to go, but telling them to look. And they're not wrong for looking. And young men too, of course. I should probably tell you why I was a member of that church. I joined that church because it was an MCC, which is queer friendly. In fact, it was founded by queers. It was in the war zone of Albuquerque, which, as you can imagine, is the lowest income section of town where I lived. I lived in a house a couple of doors down. It was the only church they could afford to rent. They got out of that neighborhood as soon as they could afford to. And they had a little food pantry. Maybe 10 people a week came for a little bag of canned goods and stuff. And I knew they had nonprofit status. They were open, non-denominational, and even welcoming of non-theists. Or said they were. And I thought it would be a good way to basically exploit the nonprofit status to beef up the food pantry, which we did when I left the church, not long after Viridiana's death. We were feeding 250 families per week, and they were taking home basically cases of food. They were also participating in it, so it wasn't a handout, it was self-generated. Of course, a lot of the members of the congregation had rather conventional theistic positions, and they tolerated me. I had no peers there. So when Miridiana died, they had nothing to offer me. And to their credit, they didn't really try. But that also included the minister. I see messages on the Facebook pages for Ariel. Not yours. I don't think you generated these pages. But I see messages about prayer. And I know that you are surrounded by theists. I suspect that some of these theists find this an opportunity to validate their claims. And maybe you feel, that this is happening at your expense and that you're being shut out. I know I did. Atheism must be wrong. There must be an afterlife. The child is at peace. The child has gone home to God. Because I guess the alternative to them seems too horrible, that the child is gone, never to be seen again. All that potential is just gone. All that joy and celebration. And see, I didn't get to experience any of the physical benefits of having a living child and watching her grow, so I can't speak to that much. But I know you're proud of her, and you should be.